when you're starting a company, or I imagine myself when I start a company, I imagine it as a process of de-risking. How do I de-risk starting a company? One way you can do that is by building your experience, building your skill set. That's just a readily, I think, obvious thing. Like, just become more experienced in a certain problem area. You'll probably be very much an expert in that space who can solve a problem in that problem area. Another thing is if you're able to build your network out among engineers, among salespeople, among investors, among other founders, you're probably optimizing for your success. You're probably maximizing your ability to be successful. Another thing is you can look at accelerators, or you look at incubators. You can talk to a lot of customers up front first. Like, there are ways of de-risking the process that I think itself is very practical. Like, that's a very practical way of approaching entrepreneurship up front, rather than just diving into a problem that you think is worth solving headlong. There is merit to that. I think, like, you'll talk to so many founders, especially those who have grown up in and around the West Coast, and they'll advise people just as that. It's like, why are you sitting here and talking about starting a company? Why haven't you started one yet? Why not now? Valid question. I just think for a lot of people, they might not have the means to do that. They might not have the resources, the access, the knowledge base, the network especially. And so if you optimize for those things, I think you de-risk the process considerably. And I think that's a practical way of approaching it. A lot of people think that starting a company is an exceptionally risky endeavor. And I think it's there's as little risk to starting a company as there ever has been throughout history. It used to be only available to the highest of classes of society, the richest, people who already had means, capital, wealth, resources, networks. Today, you have AI tooling. Today, you have an ability to connect with people across geographies quite easily. Today, you also have a wealth of incubators and accelerators that you can apply to that'll give you the means to live, to sustain yourself with, if you don't already previously have any means. And then you can build a company from there, hopefully raise money, hopefully grow fast. YC or Y Combinator is a great example. Antler has great accelerators. There are countless others, really. And so it's so much more readily available than it ever has been. And I think I understand the risk aversion in society, particularly in my generation, as compared to previous generations. I just think that the awareness of how de-risked it has become can be more spread more throughout society. You see a lot of people doing that more. There are way more founders than there ever have been. But I think at certain institutions of higher education, especially in the liberal arts, it still is a very risk-averse concept. Two kind of mental models I see all the time is there is a new market opportunity, something to be created out of thin air. I think the gig economy is a great example. I don't know who came first, Uber or Airbnb, but one of them came first. One of them monetized a resource that was already readily available to a large group of people, but yet were not monetizing that resource. So, for example, a lot of homeowners in America, they weren't monetizing that resource. A lot of folks with cars weren't yet monetizing the resource, and they could by becoming gig economy workers. So that's a great model. You create a new market out of thin air, so to speak. There's also a market where you see just pure inefficiency, right? There is something that already exists, but which can be made much more efficient. You'll see people spin out of current companies and start basically a completely competitive product, right? And whatever their moat is, they attack that moat, find their wedge. So you'll see a commonplace one, like their moat is their distribution, or their moat is a particular edge that they have in their product, whatever it is. And they'll just slowly climb up the other company and take up market share. So I think there's two sorts of models there. You either make a new market or you discover an inefficiency and try to opportunistically take advantage of that inefficiency. Just because it's been done before, or that 90% of people or 90% of the time someone has come up with before doesn't mean it's not worthwhile. I've seen so many successful companies unseat legacy companies, legacy industries even. So I think that there's so much room for opportunity, even when it's already happened before.
Yeah.
Look at all the podcasts out there. You know what I mean? Just because it's been done before doesn't mean it can't be
Exactly.
a great podcast.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. What role do you think AI plays right now in the entrepreneurship world, and how can people who are getting into the entrepreneurship world use AI to speed up the whole process?
That's a great question. I think a lot of founders in AI are trying to solve a lot of those problems right now, or that they believe are problems. I mean, AI is being applied to so many different verticals right now, like marketing, SEO optimization, growth, go-to-market sales, note-taking, God, you name it. And it's been happening to varying degrees of success. Customer support is another big one. Customer experience, all these different things. When it comes to building, though, like if we're focusing on just building and removing go-to-market out of the equation, sales out of the equation, like the process of, I think there's two prongs to building a company. It's hiring people who can build the product and hiring people who can sell the product. On the builder's side, to focus on that, the tooling out there is incredible. And I think you see that in examples of ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot, especially companies like Cursor. I think it's a Series B, Series C startup. And they pretty much brought a ChatGPT-like interface into the coding interface. So now you can chat with a bot as you're building the code. As you're building your code base, you can ask for edits, you can ask for suggestions, you can go back and forth and create an outline, all in the same interface. Like that as a tool is ingenious when it comes to building a product. Then you can extrapolate that further and look at the incredible low-code and no-code tools that are available today. You can build entirely incredible mobile apps from scratch using not a lick of code without knowing how to code at all. And there are companies that have popped up that provide that as a service. And so I think the means to build a product are exponentially growing. And I think when it comes to building a product versus selling a product, AI is being readily applied to the building of products. And we see so many incredible use cases there. On the selling of the product, it's a bit more variant. There's a lot of variance in selling the product, to some success, to little success. It depends on the company and how they're approaching it and the particular problems within that problem space that they're solving. But when it comes to building, AI is being readily applied to the point where, I think 5, 10, 20 years from now, you're going to see a lot more focus on prompt engineering than software engineering, a lot more focus on the ability to use AI rather than the ability to build incredible code bases.
So, Eamon, you have worked with a lot of startups, right?
Quite a few.
Okay. What do you think are the biggest challenges that startups face when growing?
Hiring, I think, is the first one. Hiring is so critical to a company. At the earliest of stages, a lot of, pre-seed and seed stage startups are very guarded when it comes to hiring. And I think reasonably so. Your first few hires are your most critical hires. And who you hire as your founding engineer, or your head of engineering, your CTO, who you hire as your founding account executive, your founding growth person, those people are critical to the growth of the business. Those people are going to be your next hiring managers as soon as they take that off of your hands as a CEO or a co-founder. So who you build with from an early stage perspective is critical. It's critical to company culture. It's critical to your ability to obviously build a product, obviously sell a product. And that really is one of the primary functions of the co-founder and CEO role. The other things would be, besides I have to sell my vision and my team and my product and my company and my idea to new hires, is selling to your first few customers and selling to your first few investors. So I think to go into those other two matters, your first few customers, that first set of customer feedback is critical to business, because that's how you begin iterating. And if you get if your first few customers are bad and they churn out of the business, they don't last long. That, I think, can kill a business. Unless you're going through a pivot and you need to figure out like a new customer segment to target. Beyond that, your investors are very critical. These are people who are hopefully operators previously, or hopefully founders previously themselves. And so they're critical on the board. They're critical as advisors. They're critical as equity investors on your cap table. So I think that Your first few hires, I think that's like number one for me. Your first few customers and investors are probably number two.
What are some mistakes that you've seen startups make at the early stage that had the potential to kill them fast?
Great question. Founder disputes comes to mind first. If you don't draft up a contract when you're starting a company between you and your co-founder, that can lead to a lot of issues. I've seen a lot of debt equity on cap tables, meaning like one co-founder and the other co-founder have a big disagreement and one of them leaves the company. They still have that. If there's no contract drafted between them, that co-founder who left has equity on the cap table, and you can't take that away unless you buy them out. And in order to buy them out at the early stages, you have to raise a lot of money just to buy them out. That can kill a business. Investors want to give you money to grow the business, not to, remove someone from it. So that I've seen kill a business. I've seen companies scale way too fast where they don't care about hiring as much, and they hire, just simply put, not the best talent. People who are, drifters, I think remote work exposed that a bit, especially as we shift back to more in-person and hybrid kind of work models. What other things can kill a business? No, I mean, the number one thing is running out of runway. I think like if you simply run out of runway, your business will die. So the investment market is critical. Like how much venture funding and venture debt there is available in the market is critical. That's obviously dependent on macroeconomics. It's much out of control, out of a founder's purview, but that can make or break a business. So trying to scale too fast, burning too much money up front, either on new hires or a poor number of customers who churn out, or a product that just isn't scalable, a business model that isn't scalable, a go-to-market model that just isn't scalable. That can kill a business. You run out of runway, you're done. And if you can't raise money as you're running out of runway, you're done.
How do you think that COVID kind of changed the startup ecosystem?
Oh my God. Astronomically, to say the least. We were in such a low interest rate environment that money was just flowing into risky assets. Among the riskiest, forget crypto, is startups. So many venture funds blossomed to enormous sizes, and they were piling money into certain companies that you would look at today and be like, why were you doing that? So that's a big one. And we refer to it as dry powder in the ecosystem, where there's still a lot of money among venture capitalists that is yet to be invested, which they raised years ago. And so these VCs are waiting to deploy all their capital, and they're just sitting on it. So that's one big thing that came from COVID. Another big thing that came from COVID is this accessibility to remote work. A lot of startups have been able to hire talent from around not just the country, but around the world. And so long as they can remain productive and maintain a good, healthy, strong, fast-paced work environment within a remote work culture, they've been able to succeed pretty handedly. We've seen this replicated tons and tons of times. So there's funding, there's remote work. Another big one that I've seen is it's kind of not related to COVID, but it's happened since COVID began. Just AI, again, going back to AI, it's just the tooling available, the ability to build products that, at a rate that was not possible previously, is pretty incredible, as is like the exponential increase of AI as a capability. I just think it's obviously going to be changing the world, and that's not going away anytime soon. So I think those are probably the three biggest things that I see.
Where do you think people looking to start a startup should look for ideas?
That's a good question. I think like the first space that comes to mind is obviously AI. Like how can AI be applied to take advantage of inefficiencies in certain marketplaces, in certain markets, in certain problem areas, to make things more efficient. I mean, you see AI getting applied to like everything, every legacy industry, every new problem. I mean, there's AI for this, AI for that nowadays. So that's one area I'd look in first. I think that's the most obvious area. Going back to like how much experience plays a role in starting a company, if you work in the financial services sector, a great sector to go into in the tech world right after that is fintech, financial technology. So I think just figuring out what if inefficiencies and problems you already see around you in your day-to-day is a big one. For example, like, back in the 2010s, these big, or now they're big, HR, benefits, and recruiting platforms have popped up because people were seeing how inefficient recruiting was, how inefficient providing HR, payroll, and benefits were to all these small and medium-sized businesses popping up. So I think like just looking at that problem space, figuring out like this is so inefficient, this we can apply technology, or we can create a platform that can revolutionize the way payroll services, HR, and benefits are being given to startups. Like, how can we package health insurance, distribute it in a technology platform? Like, that was a big advent of the 2010s, and you've seen companies blossom to multi-billion-dollar valuations because of that. So it's really just like experience, research. Probably, I think, investors are probably looking for those who have experience in a certain area, those who are repeat founders.
With your experience working in the business world, what do you think are the biggest lessons that you've learned?
You learn lessons incredibly fast. For me, a lot of them have revolved around narrowing down, what I'm looking for in a next role, what I'm looking for in company culture, what I'm looking for in the next company I join or start. That's on the personal side. Another thing on the personal side is when you work at a small company, you can so readily realize how much you as a member of your workplace matters. So you learn how to take feedback, how to give feedback so much more quickly. You learn how to work with others in a more intimate capacity so quickly. You learn how to be efficient, and because there's so much more accountability when there's only 15, 20, 30, 40 people at a company. So a lot of those things that they don't really ever teach you in school, or maybe they try to teach you in school, you learn so much more readily on the job in a startup world, because oftentimes you have to be a Swiss Army knife. Oftentimes you have to apply yourself to multiple different problem areas within the company. Versus at a larger corporation that has thousands of employees, you might be performing one function and you're probably only getting feedback on that one particular function. So you learn so much more and iterate so much more, I think, when the company is smaller. I'm not going to say like there's any big anything to distinguish between a large corporation, and a startup. There is so much to distinguish, but I think the smaller a company is, the more intimate the work environment, the more readily you can probably learn a lot more different things.
At the college level, how do you think colleges can best prepare students for entrepreneurship?
Great question. I've been mulling over this for the entire course of my time at Williams. When I first got to Williams, I was quite, I struggled with that a lot, because I got here and there was pretty much essentially no institutional resources available for people who wanted to get into startups, maybe even tech more broadly. I think, they helped you recruit to big tech a little bit, but in the startup world, like even if you wanted to work at a Series A or B startup, like a company that's relatively well established and it's found product market fit already, there weren't any resources. Maybe the Career Center could point you to a couple alums, but that's about it. That's why I started the club. But in discussing with Maud, a lot of these questions, discussing these questions with my club co-founders, I think for us, it's all about learning by doing. It's like, how much time can we dedicate to learning by doing? A great way to do that is by doing internships. A great way to do that is by taking advantage of our winter study, participating in the Williams Venture Studio as a club, and these other things. Or maybe you're starting an on-campus business like Willy to Go. That's phenomenal. I see these popping up a little bit more now than they have been when I first got to campus. I think that's the best way of doing it. I think that is the place for entrepreneurship in education.